Dan and I have been married for 3 years and 8 months ago welcomed our amazing son into the world. He was very planned and wanted, and motherhood had been transformative for me. I was able to take for 1/2 months maternity leave before going back to work. Without going into too many details, we both work white-collar jobs that require professional attire. A normal workday look for me is a skirt or pair of slacks, a silk blouse, pumps or boots depending on the weather, but always with a heel because I'm 5'0", maybe a blazer if I have a big meeting. Dan wears a suit almost every day. I also style my hair and do some makeup for work every day. This is what I wore before our son was born and what I continue to wear. Dan and I are pretty even in sharing parenting duties. I tend to take mornings because I'm more of a morning person than Dan. A normal morning for me starts early: short workout, shower, get baby up, get baby ready and baby off to Dan because the daycare is on Dan's way to work. I'm normally dressed at the tail end of this process, but I keep my robe on over my clothes in case my son wants to give my outfit something to remember him by on our way out the door. For the last month or so, Dan has been more irritable than normal in the morning. There have been side comments if he gets up and I'm drying my hair or getting dressed. Basically, if I'm not 100% focused on my son in the AM. Our son is happy playing and supervised, so I just chalked it up to morning moodiness, but it's been getting worse. Last night, I brought it up in what I thought was a neutral, non-confrontational way. Basically, his answer was this: his mom was 100% a mom after her kids were born. She gained a fair amount of weight after she had kids and never tried to lose it. She wore sweatpants every day and works a job where she wears a uniform, so if she wasn't in her work uniform she was in sweats and a t-shirt. She never did her hair or makeup. Her entire identity was being a mom, and she shared with me how hard it was to watch her kids start their own lives. Dan thinks I don't care about our son as much as he does since I worked on losing the baby weight and still put effort into my appearance. I feel like keeping this part of my identity actually helps me be a better mother. I love my son, but I'm still me and I still have the things I like to do. Dressing well my identity actually helps me be a better mother. I love my son, but I'm still me and I still have the things I like to do. Dressing well, blowing out my hair and doing my makeup are therapeutic to me. Now that being said, my son is my life, and if I knew that not doing those things but guarantee him a happy, healthy life, I would stop immediately. I told Dan that my son and I have our morning routine and he gets lots of time and attention before I go to the office. Dan said he wasn't looking to fight, but he just wanted me to think about my priorities and my time management. So recently, I found out my 15-year-old son, Jacob, pulled an incredibly cruel prank on one of the girls I'll call Ashley, that's in his friend group. I know this girl. She's been to our house and even attended Jacob's birthday party a month ago. She seemed incredibly sweet, if not a bit shy. So when my oldest son, Mark, he's 17, came to me and told me Jacob had asked Ashley out on a date as a prank, I was stunned. I of course asked how he could know this, hoping as any mother would that it wasn't true. But Mark showed me the family tablet we all use, but mostly my sons do, and it seems Jacob forgot to log out of his chatting app, Discord. I read the long series of messages between Jacob and his friends as they mocked Ashley all through this heartless prank. I was speechless. And that's not even getting into how he was talking, like he was some thug and not a 15-year-old living in a gated community. At first I couldn't figure out what to do or how to proceed. I'll admit that I never once imagined either of my boys would be the type of person to do something like that. But there was no way in hell I was letting this go. So after a day of thought, I decided what was going to happen. First things first, he was grounded. For how long, I'm not sure. Secondly, I'd gotten Jacob a bike for his birthday, but it hadn't arrived until the day previous, and I'd planned to give it to him when my parents came to visit since they'd been unable to make his party. But instead of that, I showed him I knew about the prank and told him he was grounded. Then I made him carry the new bike out of my bedroom closet and to the car before driving to Ashley's house, him crying the whole way. I'd called her parents earlier and explained everything, and so once we got there I had him cart it to their front porch and ring the bell. Then in front of me, Ashley, her parents, and God, I had him give a sincere apology and gift her the bike. Even I apologized to her, saying I didn't raise my boy this way and what he did was unforgivable. I also called the parents of the other boys who were a part of this little stunt, and they all seemed rightfully horrified by their son's involvement. I felt I'd handled this all as best as I could, and my friends agreed. Though once my parents found out that I'd made Jacob give his birthday gift away, they said what I did went too far. I still feel like what I did was right, but having my parents more or less dogpile on me like this actually made me wonder if how I handled it was too extreme. I believe it started when I was around 6 years old. My parents often had friends over in the house. I didn't know they were polyamorous OFC. One day I was outside playing, got hurt, and when I ran inside caught my parents making out with some random guy. They told me they have other adults that they love and it's a completely normal thing. Me being a child just accepted that. They gave up being secretive and their partners would constantly be around, even joining on outings. I remember that on my 10th birthday they invited 3 of their partners, one of who I'd never seen before. And for the rest of the day my parents just withdrew from my party and hung out with them. I never saw them doing anything explicit again, but they would kiss their partners, hug them, make flirty comments. Something that would be normal between parents, but with many more people. Sometimes I came home from school and my parents were gone and there was some random adult in our house. Some of them seemed surprised that my parents even had a child. I always hated it, but since my parents had told me this was normal, I assumed many adults probably did similar things and that it's just an adult thing all kids hate. Later they had less partners and eventually seemed to stop. Not that I'd know for sure. I moved out with 17. I didn't think about it anymore. A year ago I started therapy, other reasons. As usual the topic of my upbringing came up and it brought back many feelings I wasn't aware of. I realized that although my parents were always good to me, I had never really felt close to any of them and still have a lot of resentment that they made me feel like I had to compete for my parents' attention with random strangers. A while ago, I visited them and they told me they are going to take part in a documentary about polyamorous families, and that the producers would like to include interviews with the children. So they would love if I could agree and tell everyone that polyamory doesn't mess kids up. All my resentment bubbled up and I said that I cannot agree because I would not be able to say anything positive. My parents looked shocked. I had never brought this up before, and asked why, and I unloaded all that I always felt pushed aside. We barely had any family time without strangers intruding. It turned into an argument and I became loud and yelled that the truth is it did me up and they shouldn't have had a child. My mother cried and my father said I should probably leave. So I left and was shaken up for the rest of the week, but also felt regret because I've never made my mom cry before. Later my father sent me a message that was like, "We are sorry you feel that way. Can we have a calm discussion about this soon?" Even though I tried to, it's like I can't reply. This argument brought something very emotional up in me. I am a 28 years old female, was named after a really obscure character from Greek mythology. My preferred nickname is taken from the end of my name. I always introduce myself with "I'm my name, but you can call me" nickname. None of my co-workers in the small business we work for have ever had a problem with this before, until Megan, the niece of Jeff, one of the 2 owners, was hired. Jeff and Dave co-own the business, but Dave does the actual day-to-day running of the business. I introduced myself and my nickname as usual, but she immediately said that Bessie, not the actual name, would be a better nickname because it comes from the beginning of my name and that she liked it better. I told her I really didn't like that nickname and wouldn't answer to it and asked her to please not call me Bessie, but she insisted that it was so much prettier and that I just needed to get used to it. For the next 2 months she tried to call me Bessie, but I completely ignored her whenever she addressed me that way. Even when I knew she really needed help with something, she would call my desk phone and say, "Hey, Bessie," I would reply, "You have the wrong number, there's no Bessie here," and hang up. She then tried to get some of the employees outside the office to start calling me Bessie, but I quickly shut that down. I usually finish my work early and help them with a lot of tedious little things that aren't part of my job description, and threatened to stop helping them unless they used my preferred nickname. Friday she decided she was going to get me to respond to Bessie no matter what. We have an open office design but are at opposite ends. She started calling out Bessie in a sing-song voiceover and over again to try and annoy me enough to respond. Other coworkers got annoyed, most telling her to stop and one Lisa telling me to just let her call me Bessie already. I refused and she kept calling out Bessie louder and louder, until Dave barged in. He'd been on a conference call with an important client and could hear her yelling from his office down the hall. He told her to be quiet and that if she called me Bessie one more time, he'd write her up and dock her pay. Later, Megan cornered me in the break room, called me in for getting her in trouble and called me Bessie again for good measure just as Dave was walking in to heat up his lunch. He gave her a stern look and said, "I warned you." Then he walked to HR to have her written up. Lisa is saying I'm the for never helping Megan and that, if I had been nicer or hadn't fought her so hard on the nickname, she probably would have given up on it a while ago, but because I made such a big deal out of it, it became a challenge.